Okay.
And we're live.
All right.
Now the fun part. I go and see if it's actually live on the websites and stuff.
Okay.
All right, we got people in the waiting room already. That's great. Guys, you're early, but we appreciate it. Welcome. As you guys are dialing in, share where you're dialing in from. City, state, practice, and maybe what's for dinner. Or those of you on the West Coast, what's for happy hour?
Yeah, they're maybe just getting out of work.
Yeah, that's right. Well, so I say dinner, Shane. You would call it supper, right? Is there a difference between dinner and supper?
There absolutely is.
Really? Okay, hit me.
Yeah, yeah. It's where you're from. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's no difference in what
And like the meal.
in the meal, but
Sure.
there is a difference in like it's a dinner and supper is a thing from the deep south, at least for me, and where I grew up. Like if someone called it dinner, you knew they were not.
That's them telling on themselves.
Yeah. I remember when I was a young man, and I was dating this. It was in college, and I went to pick up this young lady from her house, and her grandmother lived with her at her family house. And I said, I walked in, I said, "Oh, y'all are cooking supper." And that was like a seal of approval, right? She was like, "Ah, yes, you can date my granddaughter."
I see.
Yeah.
I see. So, like, dating advice for you young people out there: if you're dating somebody from the South, supper.
You want supper?
In. Yeah.
That's right.
See, I've never been good at that. I've always stubbornly refused to change how I talk depending on the audience, and I make them adjust to me. I'm not saying that's a good thing, just saying that's what happens.
You love language. You're very good.
I do love language.
You love language. Yeah. But to be clear, so supper would be in the evening.
Right.
Yeah. Dinner would be lunch, what you call lunch.
Oh, interesting. So you use dinner, but dinner is earlier in the day. Interesting. So does brunch exist in the South?
In maybe if you're running in certain circles, I'm not sure.
Okay.
I
don't know what it
brunch. You know.
Yeah. I don't know what it says about me that like my first thought is, well, what about brunch? What about like the most important meal of the weekend? Come on, you want some seafood with your eggs, you know?
Yeah. People of means had brunch. I don't think.
I see. Yeah, not a lot of champagne breakfasts with when you say supper, right?
No, that's right.
All right, everybody. Thanks for joining us. Sorry for the distraction, Shane. I just got on the topic and I was curious. This is the Optometric Billing Encyclopedia. It's a repeating session where Shane Shepard and I go over billing terms, RCM terms, go over the language and the logistics and the knowledge of how to do billing. We've got some people here from Boston, from Minnesota, other folks in New England.
Right.
So we've got people from all over the country. Welcome. We would love for this to be interactive. We've got a few questions to answer between us as we get rolling. But the idea here is if you have questions about billing, whether vision or medical, whether credentialing or enrollments, whether denials or rejections, and I know all those words sound really similar, they're all quite different. And we could get into all of that and have in the past. For those of you who are here for the first time, feel free to subscribe on YouTube or LinkedIn or Facebook or wherever you're seeing. That way you don't miss a notification when we do go live again. We do sessions like this every month, whether it's on the billing and educational side or with our CS team talking through how to best optimize their use of your use of our platform. We've got a ton of fantastic software that we've built to help make your practice succeed. That's what it's built for. We are the insurance infrastructure for eye care, and we can't wait to teach you all about it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's a pleasure to be with y'all. There's a lot of people, it sounds like, who do have dinner and not supper, and so that's wonderful. Please, I'm sorry for the accent that I have. If you can tolerate that, hopefully there's some things that we can go over tonight that'll help you kind of demystify medical billing and insurance. And no one knows everything, but I'm happy to share with y'all the things that I've learned over the course. And Steve has got a wealth of knowledge himself. He's done a lot of different things in the industry and a lot of different experiences. And so we'll turn this around a little bit tonight on Steve and get a little something from him. I would love, yeah, conversations are so much better than lectures, right? And so happy to take questions from everyone, just knowing that I may not have the answer, but I would love to hear from everyone.
I appreciate that, Shane. Hey, there's some folks in the comments saying there's some feed cutout. Is it back, or are we stuttering still? Just need to know if I need to jump in and help with the technical difficulties. It looks fine on my end, but I'm in the room, so I can't tell. The chat, let me know. But assuming it's all going okay, we can get started with the questions. And again, we're going to invite everybody who's here to ask questions as they come up. So, Shane, why don't we get started? A lot of the where a lot of the first steps begin in a practice is at the front desk. So, a lot of front desk folks that we work with and the ones that we don't are pretty well versed in vision plan intake and maybe some of the other kind of general operations, but they're not as well versed at capturing medical information or triaging a patient's chief complaint ahead of time. So, what's the best way to provide your front desk, your intake team resources to get better at the medical side of the business?
Resources. Well, the first thing I would say is just start with the very beginning of the process. And there's a little baggage that people have with acquiring the data necessary to succeed from clients when making the appointment. Let's say that they may have a little hang up about asking for health insurance, right? It's a little subconscious thing. They're not used to doing it. And at first you have to kind of, I hate to say train your patients, but you've trained, if you're an established practice, you've trained them to not give it to you by not asking, right? And so when the first go around that you start asking for it, you're going to get a little pushback. People are going to go, well, why do you need that? And there's an easy answer to that. You work at a physician's office, and there are things that come up, and you like to be prepared, right? And it's a true statement to say that there are times where that will save you money, right? And so, acquiring that information from the onset, you can start doing that, even if you're not credentialed. And that's a good thing to start doing. Because one, it'll tell you what payers in your area have coverage, right? And then your staff can work through the process of overcoming, a little exposure therapy. And by doing it, they'll overcome it and learn to deal with any opposition that, the patients have about it. But mostly you go to the doctor, you give your insurance. So it's more of an internal thing, honestly, at this point, than an external thing. And so I would say that's a key, a first step.
I totally agree. I think there are tons of things like that where a lot of folks presume it's going to be an uncomfortable question or an uncomfortable answer, and because that's what they think is going to happen, that obviously is what happens because they approach it that way, right?
Yes.
The same thing is true with kind of anything you want to change in your practice. Because I'm 1,000 years old, I remember when we first started having to talk about capturing emails at the front desk and how awkward it was for people to ask about it. Like, oh, I don't want to ask for their personal information, but you have their phone number and their social security number and their address and their full name. And you're looking into their brain in a lot of ways. So that it's a pretty personal experience. I'm not saying it has to be invasive, but to your point, building building those good habits are a great way to start down your path of becoming a successful medical practice.
Absolutely. And, the next step from there, you asked what resources, the insurance companies, the payers, they don't want you to call. If anybody has worked and dealt with this, they know that's not an opinion. That's a statement of fact. They don't want you to call them. And so for that reason, they do make some resources available, and you got to get comfortable using them, right? And so whether that's the payers portal, whether that's a clearinghouse, right? You need to get used to dealing with that electronic information. In some cases, they require you to jump through that hoop in order to get to a person. Medicare is that way. You need to go, and if you're trying for claim status, you need to call in, get the claim status, and then you can get to somebody. So there's there are resources out there, and it seems they don't necessarily make it easy. They actually don't make it's not easy, but it is there, right? And so diagnosis codes, for example, what diagnosis code drives what procedure? That's a kind of a common, like for the physicians, internal baggage. You're like, am I going to do something wrong? Right? One, just follow your education, right? And then do what's medically necessary. That's the easy answer there. Do what's medically necessary. Right. And you may run into some issues with the specificity of the codes, right? But there are the diagnosis codes. But just like there are LCDs and NCDs for there it is, my Southern accent, y'all. Just like there are LCDs and NCDs, which are the CMS guidelines for procedures, each commercial payer has medical policies. And by medical policies, I don't mean the policy the patient has. Their guidelines, the payer's guidelines for procedures. And so they're out there. It is a little bit of a shotgun blast, there's so much information out there. But you're going to, it's the 80-20 rule. You're going to see many of the same payers. Your patients are going to be covered by many of the same payers. And so focus on those and look up the medical policies. And again, if you follow your education, and you have a sound process to catch error.
Right.
That's where kind of the payers are betting on you not having a sound process and a certain amount of that not getting caught, right? But if you have a sound process to catch the error, then you can address those and get them resubmitted and addressed.
Yeah, I think it's a really important point to leverage the resources that you have available. I know practices and employees of practices are stretched pretty thin timing wise, but think of it as an investment, right? I think there's no doubt that a practice that has successful medical component is more successful than your generalist vision plan driven practice. So the question we're trying to answer here, the idea we're trying to get across here is that a couple of simple steps, right? Starting to gather that information, getting your team comfortable with asking for it, understanding what to do with it, where does it go in your PM system and that kind of thing, right? Building those habits, building those inroads will help the next step happen. You can't just jump to, okay, I'm a medical billing practice. You've got to build the path to get there.
Yeah, it's got the information. Like you need information to make decisions, right? And I may sound like a broken record. People who've been kind enough to entertain us and be with us in our audience probably heard me say this, but if you have information, you can make informed decisions, right? And so the patients, oftentimes they may present for what they think is a preventative eye exam. But it may turn out to not be that, or there may be something else going on. And so if you have information for the patient to help them make that decision, then it's just human nature. The patients are going to embrace that more. if you have information for them. So when it comes to whether you're an in-network provider for the health insurance, whether they're coverage, they have coverage for the services that are necessary. These are estimates. Like no doctor can guarantee. Even the payer, when you call the payers, they go, "This is no guarantee of payment." They put that disclaimer on there. But what you can tell them is what's necessary, what's medically necessary. And if they came in thinking, okay, well, this is just going to be if this is going to be a preventative service, and now there's another expense, well, the more you can inform them, the more they're going to embrace that. So, it is a unique profession, right? There are two paths three. You got the patient pay, obviously, and you've got managed vision care coverage and health insurance, right? And so if you go to your cardiologist, it's going to your health insurance. There's not and the patient. There's not these extra little paths that something can follow, and just because they're presenting for a preventative eye exam doesn't mean that it's necessarily got to be billed to their managed vision care payer, right? There are health insurance companies that have preventative eye care. Now, that is less and less, that's covered less and less on health insurance, preventative eye exams. And it's one of the things, when I came to Anagram, it was one of the things that was kind of I had an opposing view of managed vision care payers, and that they were it was just a necessary part of a practice, maybe something that you don't particularly love, but it was necessary in order to get behinds in the chair, right? And so
I used to make a joke when people would say, well, it's a necessary evil. I used to joke and say something like, I'm legally prohibited from commenting on the evil bit, but I can talk about the necessary bit.
Well, let's talk about that a little bit, because I was of the opinion that you, from an insurance nerd standpoint,
yeah,
right? Get people in the practice. You're gonna be exposed to more people. The rates of disease. You're gonna run into more people that need healthcare, and you're gonna be able to deliver that standard of care. And that is the case, but there's less and less preventative services covered on health insurance, which reimburses like 2.5x. And that's why, like a lot of our audience, if we're being really honest, at first maybe look that way, right? But that's less and less of a thing. And so, Steve, can you talk a little bit about the practices who have embraced going out of network and the success that they've had, and how you educate the audience as you've educated me?
Well, I appreciate that setup. So I think there's a lot of hay made about what the vision plans do and what they don't do, and patient perception of it. But I've been having this conversation with practices for the last decade or so, 6 years of it at Anagram, and kind of the math is really clear about what vision plans sometimes do to your practice. There are a lot of implications on the way you price your products and your services. There are a lot of implications about the labs you can use and the services you can provide and the materials you can provide, depending on which vision plan they have. But all of it amounts to kind of the same concept. If your practice delivers your standard of care to your patients such that they associate themselves and their eye care with you and not their vision plan, then they're your patient. If the inverse is true, if you're seeing a patient who comes in and says something like, I only want what my vision insurance pays for, then that patient is telling you in no uncertain terms, you are an order taker. I belong to my vision plan. Now, I never want to reduce a patient down to a revenue figure that's unfair and sort of dishonest, right? Most of the people that we talk to are in this industry and they're eye doctors because they relish helping patients. So I never want to talk about them strictly as a revenue figure. However, if a patient is coming in telling you that I only want what's covered by my vision plan, in essence, what they're saying to you is no matter what you do, you are going to lose money on this transaction. Now, from a helping the patient perspective, we can put that to one side. But in truth, if you are seeing lots of patients every day that you're losing money in service of, then eventually you won't be able to take care of any patients. And that's true across most of the vision plans where the reimbursements haven't improved in 25 years.
Yes,
I have absolutely. Yeah. And I have a CE presentation that I deliver for optometrists where we go over just like a simple matter of economic fact. The dollar today versus the dollar in 1999 is worth about 45% as much. That is to say, a reimbursement in 2001 that was $40, it was inadequate then, to say nothing of what it is now. If it had just kept pace with inflation, that reimbursement should be $75, and that would be net neutral. But not only is it not $75, in a lot of cases, it's $30.
Amen, man.
So
It's ridiculous. Can we
great.
make another thing where the price goes down in this
Yeah.
plan? Right?
Yeah.
It's honestly, I'm a little offended for
Absolutely.
the profession.
That's right.
It's offensive, honestly.
Yeah, no question about it.
They deserve to get reimbursed more. They honestly do.
The analogy that I draw, so when I first started in eye care, I was 16. The first paycheck I got from the Pearl Vision in Buffalo Grove, I used to get an oil change. That oil change cost me $18, right? Smash cut to 2026. You remember your last oil change, Shane?
100 plus,
100 plus, right? But like the oil hasn't gotten better. It's still the same millions of years old it was 25 years ago. So why is it more expensive?
Yeah.
Because everything around changing your oil has gotten more expensive. Rent, utilities, staff, insurance, etc. It all compiles to a more expensive thing. I don't want to, I'm not trying to belittle an oil change. It's important to have it for your car to work. Absolutely. But it, by its nature, has kept pace with inflation where our doctors are losing out every time they accept that reimbursement. So then that raises the question, well, why then do practices go in network? If they know that the reimbursements are bad, and they do, nobody's happy about a $40 reimbursement. If they know that they're bad, then why do they go in network?
Yeah. Well, I get it, man. If a practice is starting out and there's a lot of chair time, right? There's a lot of spaces on the schedule. Then you want to fill those, right? And I get it, but Steve, where in the schedule dynamics, where does it make sense for someone to go, okay, there's more demand here than I don't necessarily need to go down this path, or I can at least throttle back a little bit. Right?
Yeah, it's a great question. So I'm going to step back a little bit and then get to answering that question. So if somebody was asking me if I'm about to start a practice, what should I do? Right. I would advise them to go in network with some of the bigger plans in their area to build up their patient base. And then a year or two down the line, when they've got a full book, then they should start answering the question that you asked. So if I am a new patient calling your practice, if you don't have an available appointment in the next day or two, I'm going to call a practice that does.
Yeah. And a day or two.
That's right. And look, that's not me necessarily. I'm old and cranky, and I like the places that I like. But the new lifeblood of your practice, they're not going to wait. New patients aren't going to wait for your availability. They're going to find a practice that is available for when they've decided to get an eye exam. And you have to have the space to facilitate that. And if you're turning away new business like that on a regular cadence, then you should reevaluate. A lot of practices think I'm booked out 3 months in advance, and that's great. And on one hand, kinda, right? It's kind of good because you've got a full book and you don't need to worry about empty spots. But on the other hand, if you're booked out 3 months in advance, new patients aren't coming to you. So by definition, you cannot grow.
Yeah. Well, you're going to have a higher no-show rate if you're booked out that
100%.
That's right. And I would think that the stability of the kind of depends on where you position yourself. If you're taking a lot of managed vision care, and that is the kind of the main thrust, and your book gets, you're right in regards to like, are they your patient or the managed vision care payers? So I would think if you're accepting less, if you got to the point where you can make that happen, that it's a more stable financial environment for the business, because those people aren't necessarily as fragile, right? They're not going to take off if they're your patient. They're going to stay with you.
Yeah, exactly right. There a lot of practices that we speak with call us to get the Anagram out of network software. They call us because they have an employer in their area that had VSP for years and years and years, and suddenly they switched to Davis Vision because Davis Vision gave them gave that employer a great deal. The practice has never taken Davis Vision. They have no interest in taking Davis Vision or whichever vision plan, substitute as you will. But that change from that employer is out of your hands as a practice. And if you've not done enough as a practice to make sure that they stay loyal to you, the practice, instead of to whichever vision plan they have, then you're likely going to lose them, even though you were in network with their plan before. And again, if that's out of your hands, there's very little you can do about it. But what we're suggesting here is make good, calculated, arithmetic decisions.
Yes, I'm sure I believe there's a natural progression from getting that exposure to the lives in your area, to the patients in your area. 100%. And as a new practice, what you want to build those bonds, right? But as you do build those bonds, then I think it probably makes more and more sense to think about. And the reimbursement on these managed vision care payers is so low that, like, if you get one private pay patient, if your book is full and you displace 3 managed vision care patients with one, where you're working less, you're probably having a better experience for the patient, and revenue, I have to think, is pretty sane, pretty close.
Yeah, absolutely right. I've got a comment saying they always came back the year after they went somewhere else because they loved our doctors. Wow. And look, that story is one we hear all the time. I've talked with maybe probably into the hundreds of practices these days about dropping a vision plan or several vision plans, as the cases might be. And the concerns are always the same. If I drop this plan, I'm going to lose these patients. And the answer is also always the same. You're going to lose some, but the ones that you lose were never yours. It's the same kind of conversation we have with folks that are worried about the low-cost online retailers or their low-cost local like warehouse clubs. Those customers want a lower price. They're not coming to their eye care to get the highest quality thing or the specialty care that you want to provide them. And it's good that they have a place they can go to get the care that they want.
Yeah.
That they want.
Absolutely. Yeah, I remember back in the day when I was managing a practice that there was a point, the medical side, the OD side of it, they took care of that and the standard of care. But I would measure the throughput, how many patients we were seeing and what the average revenue was. And there is a tipping point where when you see more patients, you have less time to spend with them.
Yep.
And in the optical too. And it drives the average spectacle sale down.
Yeah.
The retention rates suffer from it. I went to see a doctor not too long ago, and I waited a decent bit. I started getting a little bothered by it,
Mm-hmm.
But then the doctor came in and was able to spend the an appropriate amount of time with me. I wasn't just pushed through, and that experience kind of melted away the feeling because of the connection, like the the person being invested in what they're doing. And so I think it's a pretty strong argument for finding that tipping point.
Yeah, I think there's been a lot of ink spilled in the industry publications in the past 20 years about how important it is to fill the chair, right? Fill the chair, fill the chair, fill the chair. And I don't disagree that you should see patients when you're open, obviously. But what the industry publications have missed is that if you take every vision plan under the sun and you're booked out several weeks in advance, and the advice is, well, hire another associate, build another exam lane. Like, what that misses is when you do that, your margins go down because the cost of serving those patients has gone up. Because it's not just hiring a new associate and surfacing a whole new exam lane. It's hiring the staff to support. It's being open longer to facilitate more patients. It is, to your point, the quality of the experience, the qualitative experience in your practice is just worse. Nobody likes thinking about the pandemic, right? And rightly so. But if you think about that era, a lot of doctors I spoke with were shocked at how much their multiple pair sales went up, and were shocked at how their customer satisfaction went up because they were seeing 1 to 2 patients an hour instead of 5 and 6. And like we chose not to learn that lesson as an industry for some reason.
Yeah. It's it is a real thing, right? But it's you got to fight. I understand that, the apprehension to embrace that, because you're worried. Okay, if I lose these patients, am I going to have enough to sustain the business? So it's a valid concern.
Sure.
From a billing perspective, Steve, having enough throughput through the system. You asked some questions about how to get that started, and so pulling the benefits ahead of time and having that information allows you to keep that experience for the patients and for the staff, by the way, so that there's not a lot of unknowns when you're going back to deal with the billing aspect of it and checking the patient out and unexpected expenses. So these things too, there's a balance between all of this stuff, and these practices have to find that balance. And I would say, from a billing perspective, to go back to that aspect of this, like the cost of quality are very important in making that aspect of this engine run. Right? And if you have good information up front and you've invested in that, they teach you in business school, quality is cheaper for the business, right? Because you're not going to, and you can apply this to the optical, you're not going to have remakes, right? And it's the same thing from a billing standpoint. If you are investing in the process up front, and that would be getting the information from the patient, pulling the information so that they can make informed decision, being credentialed, not paying attention to that, being enrolled, making sure that you have a clearinghouse or a competent billing individual on your team. If not, a service that can do that for you, right? Those types of things reduce that error on the end, right? And so many people, they and I'm guilty of this in my life. Put your head down. Let's outwork this problem, whatever it is. Let's outwork it, and then you look up, and the problem's slapping you in the face, right? And so sometimes you got to take a little step back and deal with the process, deal with the big issues, invest in the early in the process, and then you won't look up and have an aging that is making you ill.
It's a bit of a cliche at this point, but lots of practice owners and managers spend so much time working in the practice that they don't have time to work on the practice, right? But it's a cliche, but it's an apt one, I think, where if you are seeing 4 or 5 patients an hour, 8, 9 hours a day, 5, 6 days a week, that's a recipe for burnout. And it's a recipe for lower customer satisfaction. I think the math is really clear on this. It actually has very little to do with your quality as a doctor or your quality as a practice. If you put 2 identical practices side by side and doctors of identical skill and charisma side by side, and one is seeing 2 patients an hour and one is seeing 5 patients an hour, which one's going to have the better results?
Yeah, absolutely.
It's just how time works.
How it works. Do you have any questions in the audience? Or do we have?
Not yet. We had some technical difficulties, but I think those are rolled out. But I have a question for you, actually. So let's assume a practice has been building toward becoming a medical practice or a more medically oriented practice. They've gotten in the habit of asking for the insurance. They've gotten in the habit of saying that it might, be that way, that the patient needs some kind of medical care when they come in. So they're having some success. At what point should a practice have a dedicated biller to take care of all of that? Or, how long should they just let whoever's taking care of that patient take care of it?
Yeah. Well, I would like that question is like there's not a like this many dollars, right? Because it depends. Right. There's a lot of variables. How efficient is your staff? There's a lot of variables there. But I would say, let me take that to kind of the signs and symptoms, to use a term from our audience and from the profession. And so, what are the signs and symptoms of a process that's breaking down, right? And that's faltering? I would say the first thing that you would look at is how far behind are you on your payment posting? All the rest of the steps, right, lead to reimbursement from a billing perspective, right? And so if your payments are not getting posted, that's not necessarily affecting the checks coming in the bank. And so if something's going to break, that's usually the first place it breaks. The staff, something's got to give. They're going to keep dealing with the claims. They're going to keep filing the claims, working the objections, working the denials. But if something's going to give, it's going to be payment posting. And so I would look and see how far behind are you in your payment posting. The next thing I would say, in order to be able to measure that, is to make your payments come in electronically. Right? If your payments are coming in via an EOB, which is paper, right, and versus an ERA, which is electronic, then how do you quantify that data? You really don't. You don't know. You'd have to sit down and try to figure out, okay, how much money came in the bank? Is there a dip there? How much is being reconciled in my practice management system? People look at that practice management system as the source of truth. And I
don't mean to laugh. Sorry.
Right. And so anybody who's tried to maintain a database will tell you that it's fraught with error. Right. And so having electronic payments come in help you quantify that data. Right. And you can look at that information and go into your practice management system and see if it's been reconciled. Right. If it's a piece of paper, you've got to go pull it rather than it being pushed to you. Right. And these practice management systems these days have a lot of integrations so that electronic data can be absorbed. And so it helps you quantify things and stay on top of it. So that would be another thing I would say, is look at your enrollments and see how many payers you're enrolled with. And just to be clear with the audience, there's a difference between enrollments and credentialing. And a lot of times people use those terms and they think they're synonymous. But you want to be enrolled with the payer so that data can go back and forth electronically, right? You could be in network with a payer and not enrolled with a payer, right? And so if you're in network,
in network means credentialed.
Right. Yes. Thank you, Steve. Yes.
Tying that together.
That's right. You can be credentialed. There's the specificity of the language right there on display. And so, but you could be credentialed and not enrolled. Right. And to show you how asinine it is, like if you're a practice that has more than X number of employees, I think it's 15, something like that. If you're a very small practice, you can submit paper claims for Medicare. But if you're larger than that, you cannot. You have to submit them electronically. Right? But they don't require you to be enrolled in order to be credentialed. Well, how can you submit claims? How that you couldn't, right? And so the process breaks down. And
yeah, so you could be meeting the requirements as suggested and still be missing a ton of information and be missing the ability to do something as basic and foundational to this as filing claims.
Yeah, and absolutely. For something for our audience to look at, like if you're able to pull Medicare benefits from your clearinghouse, then someone enrolled you. Right? You have to be enrolled to get benefits from Medicare. And that's the exchange of electronic data, right? Some payers don't require that enrollment. You can sign up for a clearinghouse, ping the payer, and you can get the information. But some do, right? Medicare is one of those. If you're unable to pull Medicare benefits from the clearinghouse, you're not enrolled. Right? Now,
before you get off the benefits, because I think we're talking about getting benefits from the clearinghouse. I think this is an important time to highlight what that looks like. So let's say you are credentialed and enrolled and you go to your clearinghouse to get medical eligibility and other information. What is the kind of information that you get versus the kind of information that you want to see, right?
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. The kind of information that you get, if you haven't gone down this path, is going to be whether the policy is active, whether there's a pre-existing conditions, whether there is a deductible, things of that nature. And those are important. Obviously, if the policy is not active, then it doesn't do you any good, right? However, I mean, people just apply your own experiences at the doctor. Just because somebody takes your insurance doesn't mean it's a covered benefit, right? And so, in optometrists, they render multiple types of services that hit different benefits, and so those are these are my greatest hits. Anybody who's watched these are first, right? You're going to get preventative eye care. You're going to get a specialist office visit, diagnostic testing, surgical procedures, anything that starts with a 6, foreign body removals, punctal plugs, and laboratories, right? Laboratory testing, tear film testing, things that start with an 8. So the different services hit different benefits, right? And those benefit types are available through the clearinghouse. But you have to know to go look for them, and you have to interpret them. That's a difficult part of it. You have to interpret that information. We are working on here comes a shameless plug. We're working on a medical eligibility tool to remove the noise. Right. So when you ping a clearinghouse for a preventative service, you probably get, eye exams, colonoscopies, and mammograms. You're going to get a lot of this stuff. Right. There's a lot of stuff. Oh, I think we lost Steve. Are you there?
No, I'm here. I'm just letting you take center stage. Go ahead.
Okay. I was like, oh, that's no good. Where was I? Oh, you're going to get a lot of different types of information. So to start over, when you pull those medical eligibility, when you pull benefits from a health insurance company via a clearinghouse, you're going to get a lot of different types of information, a lot of information that doesn't apply to you. And so we are working on an eligibility tool that will pull out the noise, remove the noise, so that at least you're not trying to decipher information that's not applicable. Right? Let's start there. Let's remove the information that does not apply to you, right? And pull those necessary aspects of the policy, all those benefit types. So we're working hard on that. And just like Anagram's been a disruptor and a leader in the industry and out of network managed vision care, we're trying to go about this medical aspect of it in a more thoughtful way that gives you information that's useful. And there are businesses out there that pull that surface level information, and but I got to be honest with you. Like if I have a car with 3 tires, it's not drivable. Right? It doesn't matter that I had 75% of what I needed.
Mm-hmm.
Can I drive it? No. Right. And so the same is true with pulling this information on medical services. If you're not getting those benefit types, then you've got 3 tires. You can't drive that car. And so we're working on that.
If you think about the pitfalls that we hear about, and those of you who are listening who are in practice, the things that are preventing docs from going more medically oriented, it is the fear of running into this thing, not having the right information, not knowing whether a patient is eligible for benefits or not. There's a lot of trepidation around filing a claim, getting it not even rejected or denied, getting it approved, but having it all apply to the patient's deductible, and suddenly the patient owes you all this money. And that's not a pleasant conversation to have.
Well, it affects retention rates, right? This is a real thing. Like people they have apprehension about going down this path. It's an understandable and realistic, right? Because if you don't do this part right and you create unexpected financial consequence, liability for the patient, then that can come back to bite you, right? And so you need to inform the patient, have a good process, have this information available to you, and do your best to, like, nothing's perfect. You pull this information and you try to have it available. You're not going to bat 1,000, but patients understand that. They understand that if you just really don't invest in that and create you're not going to get paid, and you're going to render the care that you need to render, right? But you're not going to get paid, and so let's do both. We can do both. Let's render the standard of care and get paid. How about that? Can we do that? Right.
And that's what we're building towards. I mentioned at the start of this that we're building the infrastructure for insurance in eye care. There's a lot that has gone into that, a lot of research, a lot of engineering, a lot of development. We've got a fantastic team of engineers devoted to learning about this, to optimizing this, to making your day in your practice easier. I liken it to, and I know it's not like transitions, right? But I liken it to transitions in that when I was a practicing optician, I dispensed my first pair of transitions without mentioning to the patient that they don't darken in the car. Now I'll own that, right? I didn't learn enough about it to sell it, but they'll get dark when you go outside. How cool is that? And I didn't specify in the car because in the car in my head was indoors. So that doesn't count as outside. But in the patient's head, I need sunglasses. It counts as outside. So I set the wrong expectation, or rather, I didn't set the right expectation for the patient, and the patient was rightly upset with me, right?
Yeah.
It's the same kind of thing with this. If you set the right expectation, your patients are going to be okay with it. They're going to be happy that you are an expert enough to warn them about the likely outcomes. And then you deliver on that promise, or you exceed that promise, and then you got a patient for life, and one that you've taken care of. To your point, Shane, you've made a decent amount of money, and you've been able to provide them the standard of care that they deserve and that you want to deliver. That's what we're trying to build.
Yep, absolutely. And if clients, they're going to provide good care, right? I mean, the providers are going to provide good care, and if they have a sound billing process, and and if they're having optical or delivering what they're supposed to be, and telling the patients they're going to deliver, then you don't give the patients a reason to leave. Why would they?
Right.
Why would they leave? Right. And so you just want to reduce that error all across the board. Steve, I think we have.
We have a question.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on taking only medical insurance and having patients submit themselves to vision? We've seen it done for MD, OD practices successfully, but not sure if it carries over well for OD only.
Well, I'll take a little swing on this, but I feel like this is really more up your alley, Steve. But
I was going to say the same to you.
I have clients that we do billing for optometrists, and we have kind of the whole gamut from very large enterprise type clients to very small businesses. We have clients that are out of network with managed vision care payers, in network with medical, that are only managed vision care. So we have clients that run the gamut. And so I think what I would say, Ashley, is that those practices that are able to make this happen, I can tell you they seem like happier practices, right? Just for anecdotally, the interactions that I have with them, the practices, the providers themselves, and the employees, they seem like they're just living life a little bit on the grass is a little greener. It seems like if they're able to do that. Now, not everybody's able to do that, right? I understand that there are practices that where your practice is located, maybe you're in an urban place where you don't have a lot of disease and there's a lot of coverage, and right. So it just depends on each practice, but I will say that there are definitely OD practices that are very successful with only accepting medical insurance and that being private pay when it comes to the things that aren't covered. Steve,
Yeah,
what would you say?
I think that answer about sums it up. Although I will say, Ashley, that depending on the services provided, they may not be applicable to vision plan exam, right, or vision plan benefits. So the patient may not be able to take the invoice they receive from you and file that for them. The sort of the subtext of that question is we're in network or credentialed with medical payers, but we are out of network with vision payers, and the patient has both. Can the patient coordinate benefits on their own behalf? If the services provided are a diagnosis and procedure that are not applicable to a vision plan reimbursing the patient or the provider, as the case might be, then it won't work, right? It'll just get denied. But if it has services or procedures that the vision plan will normally pay, then the patient will likely be able to get reimbursed, but at their out-of-network rate. The issue with that is patients don't want to do homework, right? There's a general sense where, like, you've got, like, contact lenses are a good example, right? Contact lens rebates. Contact lenses have gotten really expensive over the last 25 years, and they've gotten, we've gotten better technology. We've got silicone hydrogel dailies, so a patient can buy 700 contacts for their use for an entire year, and that can cost them over $1,000. Vision plan might pay for a proportion of it, but the contact lens companies recognize that that's a lot of money, and they help practices by offering a mail-in rebate. Now, it's 2026. When was the last time you mailed something, Shane?
Email.
Yeah.
Email.
Exactly. Yeah. Bingo, right? I'm a millennial. I've written 3 checks in my life, right? And I've sent very few actual physical letters. So patients aren't accustomed to doing that. And why I say that in the context of contact lens rebate is, even though all they have to do is fill out a form, put a couple of box tops in an envelope, and send it into the contact lens company for $200 of effectively free money, rebate redemption across contact lenses is around 6%, which means 6 out of 100 people will actually do it. Now, there's nobody on the contact lens rebate side of things trying to deny that. They get the thing, they pay the thing. Insurance companies are different. So think about like the 6% of patients that'll send something in. You've got to rely on them to fill the form out correctly, and for the people who receive it on the other end to not deny it. So while I think it's probably possible that the patient could get reimbursed, I think it's incredibly unlikely.
So, you know, a thought just popped in my head as you were going over the economics of that. And it, interesting. Let me use that word. The price of contacts have gone up. Somehow that's managed to increase over the course of time.
Yeah.
But the people delivering the services to prescribe the contacts, they're still right. These managers care payers. Again, I get offended for the profession.
Yeah, it's like I'm deeply passionate about it too. It's why I take the opportunity we have so seriously. Like the reason I work for Anagram is that we help people who help people. They are in the business of delivering eye care. You know, your vision, your visual health are some of the most important things you have as a person. So the people that serve that, I think, deserve a lot more than the vision plans provide. You know, thankfully, we've got medical plans that can help and that provide a decent reimbursement. And on a sort of a cultural level, I've seen people who are much more inclined to shopping locally. Right. Like I mentioned earlier, I'm a millennial, right? I don't like big box stores. I don't love shopping online. I'll shop online if I can't get the thing nearby, or if it's like a packaged good that is the same everywhere. So who cares? But when it comes to something that relies on expertise, I don't like the big box retailers because the quality is just worse, because the economies of scale never actually scale appropriately to the consumer. So when I need to go, when I need like a plumber, I don't go to a big plumbing whatever. I go to a local plumber that has a reputation, that has been serving this community forever, is familiar with the buildings and so forth. And a weird sort of tangent, if you look at like the biggest channels on YouTube, they're like woodworking and furniture restoration and building, and like people love craft.
Sure. For sure. You know, and the beautiful thing about optometry, right, is that the individuals rendering these services, even if they're associated with one of these bigger box, right, they're still in control and delivering that.
Absolutely.
Right, delivering that thing. And so your point is well made. You know, when I want something for myself and I want to save and get something of quality, I do go to, but that's the beautiful thing about the physicians, is that even if they're in an environment like that, they're in control of that connection, you know.
Maybe I think that kind of, I think that kind of independence is invaluable. You know, there are those big box retailers that have an independent OD next door, right? And it is a fundamentally different experience than those big box retailers that have a dependent optometrist in the same space. Not taking anything away from their abilities as a clinician, that's not what I mean, but they are restricted by virtue of company policy, right? There are certain things that they are just not allowed to do.
There's pressure there, but they do have a standard of care, and they are every much as a physician as the individual.
No question about it.
So, hey, I want to ask the audience, because we're drawing, time is drawing to an end here, and if we didn't cover the topics that you wanted to talk about, if you wanted to hear specific things, I'd love for you to post them right now, and we can address them if it's about specific codes or a specific process. If it's about some other aspect of managed vision care, love to. We won't call you out now. We won't even bring it up. But if you could post what you would love, specifically what you would like the next one of these engagements to look like, we'd love to hear from you.
Yeah, really, really important point. And if you guys are watching us on our website, if you're looking at the Anagram live events page, there's a calendar there. There's a little plus sign in the lower right-hand corner where you can subscribe to the calendar. It'll show you our next event. It'll show you when we're coming to a local event. Shane and I are going to be at Optometry's meeting next week. And then John Wiley, Liam, and myself will be at the United Opticians Association Leadership Conference in Chicago the following week. We were just at the Pennsylvania Optometric Association earlier this month. So we try to make it out to wherever ODs are. We really relish the opportunity to have this conversation. So if you have questions, like Shane suggested, put them in the chat. You can send them over to me as well, steve@goanagram.com. Always happy to answer those directly or bring them up on the next call. So Shane, did you have any other questions that you wanted to ask?
No, I'm just really thankful for people giving up their time to come, and it's an honor to talk to them. And so I love thank you, just thank you. And if you are going to be one of these events, please come chat us up. It won't be, not a hard sell. We talk to people, and we try to represent our company through competency and information. And so we won't beat you over the head with our products. We'll tell you what we have to offer and if it works for you. And if you have questions, let's talk about it. So thank you. That's really it. Thank you for your time.
Yeah, and I want to reiterate that. I couldn't have said it better. Thank you, everybody, for your time. Thank you for being here. If you have questions, shoot them over to steve@goanagram.com, and during our next session, we'll answer those. And then we can follow up. I really appreciate your attention. Thank you for your questions. Thank you for your comments. Thanks, everybody, for being here. I have been Steve Alexander, VP of Industry and Strategic Partnerships, joined by Shane Shepard, who's our head of RCM. He is the brains behind everything we do insurance-wise, and don't let the accent fool you.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you for the questions, and we appreciate you.
Bye, folks.
Take care.